Thank you. Hi.
Hello.
I'm Zoe from Brazil. Whoa, pretty nervous. I'm very new to everything here and your teachings. And before your talk yesterday, nothing was making sense for me. But then after the talk, I really experienced the being, which was amazing, and I was very worried that I would lose it. And okay, but when you talk about the non-duality, and you said today that goodness of infinite being has no opposite, then it's kind of confusing to me, because it seems like in a level there are opposites and duality, and then on another level there's only the good part, like goodness and love and happiness. So it's, I don't know, kind of confusing for me.
Okay. So the best analogy I know to respond to this question is the sky and the clouds. Imagine a sky, not like today, but a sky that is completely covered in clouds. So all you're seeing is grey clouds. And then at a certain point, a gap opens up in the clouds and you see the blue sky. And to begin with, you think that the blue sky is just a blue cloud that's appearing along with all the other grey clouds, because it's a patch of blue, and then another clouds, and there's another gap in the clouds, another patch of blue. To begin with, you think there are lots of grey clouds and a few blue clouds. That's how it appears superficially. Yeah. But then when you look, so there seem to be opposites: blue clouds and grey clouds. Blue clouds, let's call them black clouds. Blue clouds and black clouds, there seem to be opposites. But you realize that actually the blue clouds are not clouds, that they're gaps in the cloud cover through which you see the all-pervasive sky. So it's not really, the clouds, the blue clouds and the black clouds are not on the same level. They appear to be equal and opposite, but they're not. The blue clouds are really the blue sky shining through gaps in the cloud cover. Well, the experience of happiness is like that. The experience of happiness is the blue sky. That seems to be an emotion that alternates with suffering. To begin with, we think happiness and suffering are just two different emotions: the grey sky and the blue sky. The grey clouds and the blue clouds, two equal and opposite emotions. But when we look closely, it's not like that. The suffering is the grey cloud cover. Happiness are the gaps in the grey clouds where the ever-present background of being, your true nature, shines through. So what appear to be equal and opposite emotions, happiness and suffering, are actually on two different levels. The suffering is in our feelings. Happiness, in other words, happiness is not a feeling, it's the shining of being. But and like the sky, it is ever present. Well, you might object then and say, well, if it's ever present, why don't I feel it all the time? Well, the blue sky is always present, but we don't see it all the time. Why? Because much of the time it's covered in grey clouds. It's still there. So even when we're suffering, the blue sky of happiness is still there. We just don't feel it because it's covered with the grey clouds of sorrow. So it's the same goodness with a capital. That's why John Milton, these are thy glorious works, parent of good. Thine, this universal frame. He speaks of this. It's traditional to speak of God as pure goodness with a capital G. what is being referred to is the inherently peaceful, loving nature. The absence of separation, the absence of otherness, the absence of evil. Evil is what's called evil is in the cloud cover. When the clouds dissipate, what's left is called good. It's not the opposite of evil, it's the background that only appears to be the opposite of evil, when we mistake the patch of blue for a blue cloud. So good and evil are not opposites. Evil is the cloud cover, good is the blue sky.
Then why? Why the clouds?
Because if in order to know something or experience something, we have to know or experience that thing from a distance. The reason, it's for that reason that you cannot see your eyes. You can't see your eyes because your eyes they're too close. You can only see something that is at a distance from your eyes. Yeah. That's just an analogy. It's only possible to know something objective in subject-object relationship. I know my thoughts. I perceive the tree. I love you. All knowledge and experience takes place in subject-object relationship. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Imagine infinite being. Try to visualize infinite being. Can you imagine infinite being knowing anything in subject-object relationship?
No, because it's everything.
Perfect. And you said you didn't understand much until Yes, infinite being by itself cannot know anything or experience anything, because as we just saw in the previous example, in order to know something or experience something, we must stand apart from it. The reason you can see this is because you see it from a distance. The reason you can't see your eyes is because your eyes can't separate themselves from themselves. You can't stand back and look at your eyes. That's why you can see everything apart from your eyes. So that's, as you say, the reason why infinite being cannot know anything or cannot perceive or experience anything, because to do so, it would have to separate itself from that thing and look at it. So infinite being cannot know anything by itself. But imagine that it wanted to know something. I'm not suggesting infinite being wants to. I'm just personifying infinite being. Imagine that infinite being wanted to know something, but it realized, in my current state, being the totality, I can't know anything because I have to separate. Where would I go? I would have to separate myself from myself and look back at myself and say, oh, there's a world, or there's a chair, or there's a person. But it can't. Where would it go? Where would infinite being go? How would it separate itself from it? It couldn't do that. It's like empty space. If space, vast physical space of the universe, wanted to step outside of itself and look at itself, where would it go? Where would space go if it wanted to get outside of itself and look back at it? It can't do that. There's nowhere for it to go. It would be more space. So infinite being, let's imagine that it wants to know something. It thinks, oh, I'm caricaturing infinite being now. It would think, oh, I know. I have to localize myself within myself. I have to seem to become a finite being. Then, from the point of view of that finite being, I can look at another part of myself over there and perceive it as an object. So, infinite being imagines within itself. It imagines, it dreams. Just like you do when you dream at night. You fall asleep, and within your own mind you dream a world, but you localize yourself within your own world in order to see the dreamed world. Infinite being localizes itself within itself and assumes a finite point of view, a temporary. It seems to become, without ever actually becoming, it seems to become a temporary being, a finite being. And from the point now, it can stand apart from something and look at it and say, oh, there's a tree. So, and we, all of us, are these localizations, but it comes at a price. Doing this, and this is the way infinite being is able to know manifestation, is able to see something manifest. But manifestation comes at a price. And infinite being pays for manifestation with its innate happiness. Because as the whole, it is completely fulfilled. It lacks nothing because there's nothing for it to. So it is pure happiness, pure unadulterated happiness that knows no opposite. Fullness, completion, sufficiency, fecundity. It's just pure perfection, completeness, wholeness. But as soon as it becomes, or seems to become, a temporary finite self, it overlooks its nature. It becomes temporary, finite, vulnerable, fragile, subject to change, subject to disappearance. So it overlooks its inherent happiness. It no longer feels, I am infinite, whole, perfect, complete, full. It feels, I am temporary, finite. I lack something. I need something. I need to be completed. And that's why all temporary, finite beings are constantly interacting with the world, trying to find someone or something that will take it back to its original sense of wholeness, completion. Of course, we are all here because that search for wholeness and completion in the world hasn't worked. But to begin with, that's what all finite beings or separate selves are doing, seeking wholeness, seeking their original wholeness, because the memory of their original nature, it remains in them, that this memory of their eternity, that all individual beings retain this taste of their original nature in them, and it manifests in them as their longing for happiness. So that's why once there is manifestation, as there is for all of us, that sorrow is inherent in the separate self, because we've been cut off from our source. We've forgotten. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. We have forgotten. We have overlooked. Being has forgotten itself. It has allowed itself to be condensed into a little fragment, and in doing so, it has overlooked its innate happiness. So that's why there's always sorrow in manifestation. That's why the Four Noble Truths begin with the statement: there is suffering. If there is, for a finite mind or the separate self that we seem to be, suffering is innate. It's not innate in our being, but it is inherent in the feeling of separation, because the feeling of separation entails the overlooking of our true nature, and thus the forgetting of our innate happiness. So it's for that reason I say sometimes that manifestation comes at a price. The infinite pays for manifestation with its happiness. And hence this longing in each of us, the one thing that all individuals want above all else is happiness. We all want to go home. We all want to be returned to our natural condition. Sorry, that was a rather long answer to your question. Does that answer your question?
No, it made me think, like, so the infinite being decided to play this game,
no.
and
okay.
then, but then isn't
okay.
it sorry for that?
But I said it, when I said the infinite, imagine that infinite being wants to manifest. Yeah. It doesn't want to, because if it desired, imagine infinite being desiring manifestation. That desire would already be something manifest. So it could not be the cause of manifestation. It would already be manifest. So that's why I made this little caveat to begin with when I said I didn't seriously mean that infinite being wants to experience the world. It is just infinite being's nature to do so, to manifest itself in form. It is just its nature to do so for no reason. So for infinite being, there's no reason to manifest, to localize itself as a finite mind. But for the finite mind, there is always a reason, always a purpose. The finite mind either wants to understand something, or one way or another, the finite mind is always seeking to be returned to its infinite source. And the way we experience that as human beings is our longing for happiness, our longing for peace, our longing for understanding. A scientist's longing for understanding, our longing for relationship, intimate relationship, our desire for happiness, our desire for peace. All of these longings, all of these desires are modulations of the one desire. The one desire of the finite to be returned to its natural condition. So there's no reason for the infinite, but there's always a reason for the finite. The finite, because there's always a reason for everything the finite mind does. The finite mind then imagines that there must be a reason for the infinite. But that's a mistake. The finite mind is imposing its own, projecting its own limitations onto the infinite. They don't pertain to the infinite. There's no cause for the infinite. There is a cause for the finite. There's no reason for the infinite to do anything, but there is a reason for the finite to do something.
Thank you.